So we are going to wait about 2 minutes for people to come in. Are we ready? Do we think it's time to go? I think we should start. Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Kristen McDermott and welcome to Transformation Thursdays. This is a panel series proudly presented by Laurel Springs School. As a pioneer in online education, Laurel Springs has empowered K-12 students to pursue their dreams for the last 30 years. They offer a distinguished college prep curriculum featuring full flexibility, self-paced learning, and tailored guidance for each student's unique journey. Laurel Springs aims to help students and families navigate today's challenges with confidence and prepare for tomorrow's success. Thank you for joining us and supporting this meaningful conversation. So now I will introduce our panelists. First, Mary Emma Willis. Mary Emma is an educational author and consultant, helping families and educators learn about the unique learning styles of children through tools like the Self-Portrait Online Learning Assessment, which has been used by Laurel Springs in the past. She also conducts workshops, trainings, and seminars. Mary Emma holds a master's degree in education and California Life Teaching credentials for regular and special education. And then we have Randy Heatherman, and she is the Equestrian College Advisor, an independent educational consultant with nearly 2 decades of experience in higher education and a lifetime spent in equestrian sports. A former senior assistant director of admissions at Albion College, she was instrumental in creating its equestrian program and later studies, blending her academic experience with a deep understanding of intercollegiate equestrian opportunities. And finally, we have Chris and Suzanne Johnson, and they are the parents of Laurel Springs alum Elizabeth Johnson, class of 2024. They are a military family that began their journey with Laurel Springs in 2021 for their daughter's sophomore year and have seen the program help their daughter achieve not only academically in high school, but now at the Naval Academy. And they appreciate the way Laurel Springs prepared her as a student. And I am a psychotherapist who works with teens and young adults. I have been studying resilience and doing research on resilience for the last 20 years. So my passion is teen mental health and helping teens be more resilient through the stresses of school and helping parents help their teens be more resilient. So we are going to spend the next 35 minutes or so answering some questions, hearing from our panelists, and then we will answer some questions from you all. So, as a psychotherapist who works with teens and young adults, I would like to start a discussion about how online school supports mental health and well-being. So Chris or Suzanne, would you be willing to share some of your thoughts on how online education supports mental health?
Thank you for having us, Kristen. I think online learning is amazing for teenagers to allow themselves to study and educate themselves without the social pressures, without the distractions of regular school life. For our daughter, she preferred online learning, and we transferred during the COVID times, and she found it just very easy to take her classes without distractions, without the pressure of having a very rigid day, because she was at the time a competitive gymnast and needed to practice so many hours a day, and going to regular school and having classes till 3 p.m. every day, which just wasn't, it was just creating this very stressful environment for her. So when we switched to online, she felt more in control, more relaxed. And she's the youngest of our three girls, and she just seemed the happiest out of all the teenagers we had in the house at the time.
Because it was just less stressful, it sounds like, for her to be able to manage.
Less stress, more control. And I felt she was comfortable having her own schedule and being in control of that. That was very important to her.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know, Mariam, you had something to say about this topic as well.
I do. And, speaking of resilience, which I know you're the expert in that, but I just want to say for resilience to happen or to create resilience for kids, one of the things, I've found is that the more successful they are and the more they feel good about themselves, and even having that sort of control over their schedule, and they start to feel like, oh, I can do this. They're more confident about what's going on. It isn't just somebody else saying, do this paper, do that paper, do this, do that. It's like they're going to their job, so it's something that's worthwhile that they can own. And it's like they feel responsible for it. This is my work and I'm doing it and I'm doing a great job. And the more that they can feel that, the more resilient they become when things get tough. Because I know a lot of times adults like to say, this, you have to do this thing and just do it. And the harder it is, the better it is. But that is really not true. If it's so hard that they can't do it or feel like failures, they're not going to become resilient. So this is one of the great things about, online school.
So it sounds like you're saying there's more opportunity to meet each student where they are and help them be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. And you're right. That builds, like, success builds confidence and builds resilience. And so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I'm not going to have every question for every panelist. So Randy, don't feel left out, because I'm going to start with you for another question, just so we can get through a bunch of different topics. So for Randy, I want to move on to just this idea of socialization. So one of the concerns I hear from parents is that would their students, lack the ability to have, socialization with other kids? Would they feel isolated if they did online school? Would you be willing to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. Because I've worked with a lot of students who have gone to online school, and I have many students right now who are in online school, and we have these conversations. I always check in with them, not just academically, but what's going on? Are you seeing your friends? Are you having a social life? And I find that those students are usually having the social life that they want to have. Just because it's not happening between that 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. the way that it would in traditional school, they tend to have more directed friendships that they either have had for a long time and have stayed with them, or they've made new friends. Obviously, many of my students are in a sport, and that's why they're selecting online education, is to pursue that sport. And so they're making friends in that area. And so I think it's different socialization, but I think in some ways maybe it's more meaningful and the connections are more deeper because of the fact that they have to seek it out in a different way.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. This is one question that I would love to hear from all of you on. So I don't know, Chris, this time, do you want to speak? Well, I don't know if it's fair to speak for your wife, but one of you, Chris or Suzanne.
No, I agree. I think it allows them to control, their environment. And like Randy said, like Elizabeth was able to choose where she wanted her to spend her time outside of the computer or outside of the classroom, as well as, she was able to control her time and use her time more efficiently with the, in front of the computer. So I think with the online school, when she sat down in front of her computer, it was all business, and she was able to really get a lot done, and she was able to control what she wanted to do in a social environment, and she was able to do multiple sports and control. And like Suzanne had said earlier, she was able to feel and control. So
socialization was not a problem.
Not a problem, and the fact that she was able to control who she wanted to be with, it eliminated a lot of the variables that we couldn't control, and those are all positives.
Yeah, for sure. And Mariemma, do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're in, locked in your house or something for the whole, There are lots of groups. First of all, there are the family connections, relatives, cousins, and all of that. But then there are your neighbor friends, and your maybe you take karate, or maybe like the equestrian, or you're in different groups all the time. And I've never understood that socialization question myself, because whether you're doing online school or even the younger kids that maybe are doing homeschool in different ways, you have so many different groups that you belong to. Oh, and I don't want to forget to say this, and this has been studied for years since homeschooling began. Kids that do this kind of independent schooling and are around all different ages instead of being in their grade, they are much better at working with all kinds of people, all ages. They're not, a lot of times kids that are in like only in their grade level, they don't know how to talk to adults. I mean, they can say please, thank you, that kind of thing, but they're not well versed in speaking to adults or kids that are younger or older. And we find that kids that are in these independent study programs become very adept, and they're very skilled in that. I don't know if you found that as well, the Suzanne and Chris, for your daughter.
Well, I know my daughter, my oldest daughter happened to be living with us at the time, and Elizabeth and her older sister became very close because they spent a lot more time together, and that's a beautiful relationship that continues now. She was able to go to high school, and she would she would come to work with us sometimes, and
that's great.
She was able to be mobile and flexible. I don't know if that adds anything, but certainly I think it bonded my daughters, just being able to spend more time together.
So it sounds like everyone agrees that really the socialization is not a problem. So that's great to hear. So
not just not a problem, but actually a plus.
A positive. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And let's switch gears, but stick with you, Mariemma, for a second. So let's talk about how this type of school, online school, supports personalized learning for different learning styles, because that's your area of expertise. Can you just say a little bit more about how that works?
I'd love to do that. So there are different aspects of learning strengths, learning styles, and there are different categories like your modality, your interests, your talents, even your environment. So if you're doing independent school, if you're doing online school and you need to move, you can move, you can get up, you can get snacks if you need that. You might need to work standing up, like drafting people that have the tall table. And you can do that. Or you can do, sit on the floor or beanbag chair or whatever you need for your environment. Maybe blue puts you in a better mood so you can have that color around. There are all kinds of things that can affect your focus, and your ability to stay with something and be in that sort of motivational mode to, and this is for adults too, by the way, on the job. All of this pertains to everybody. But maybe you need more hands-on, and maybe you need to watch a video of the thing that you're studying. So you can do that. You can go to YouTube or whatever the family is, comfortable with, and then you can watch that novel, and then you have a deeper understanding because maybe you're a picture learner and you need that, or maybe you're an auditory learner where you can listen to the audiobook instead of reading it, and you get the information better that way. So there are all kinds of things that you can customize, including sometimes, depending on the courses that you're taking, bringing your passion into it. Like if you love cooking, there are courses in chemistry of cooking, so that's chemistry. And history of horses, by the way, I've done that with students so many times for social studies. They do history of horses, which brings in all kinds of things, other countries, other cultures, the whole history from the Greeks, to now. It's really amazing. So those are some of the ways that you can customize at home.
That is helpful to hear all of those ways. And sticking with the horses, Randy, I know you had some specifics to add to this topic as well.
Mine wasn't even specifically about horses. But yeah, I look at it in terms of customizing for students who may know of a career path or an interest that they want to pursue at the college level. And so looking at their strengths and interests in combination with their future goals and being able to customize in that way and say, oh, maybe I want to be a veterinarian. So really loading up on science courses and getting to dive in to that and really showing strength in that area so that the colleges go, oh my goodness, this student really does want to be a veterinarian because look at all that they've done. There's just such a variety of opportunities available to them to, like I said, play to strengths, but also play into interests and then shape that toward what a college application is going to look like.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know Suzanne and Chris, you talked about also that just the curriculum was one of the things that attracted you to Laurel Springs in particular. Do you want to say a little bit more about that? It sounds like, just the depth and the ability to customize it like that is.
Sure. I think, Elizabeth at 9th grade was at another online school, and one of the main reasons we switched to Laurel Springs was because you can customize your curriculum. At that time, she knows she wanted to try to get into a service academy, so she wanted to build her curriculum to give her the best chance. And so that was a big reason we pivoted. I don't know if you want to add to that, Suzanne, but
she was mostly interested in being challenged in academics, which Laurel Springs really offers. They offer honors classes and AP courses, and she was able to take everything that was needed from AP courses in math and science to computer classes, and these were all vital because she had to be prepared academically for an engineering curriculum that she's taking now. And from what we hear from her, she's more than prepared. She finds that it's much easier this year, that she doesn't have to teach herself these classes. Basically, Laurel Springs is a challenge when you're trying to learn AP material on your own. And so it really does prepare you for college in the best way. So
yeah, I think it's structured to where you really learn it. So now she's in her first year, a very challenging curriculum at the Naval Academy, and she's handling it just fine. She feels very prepared. So, it really set her up nicely.
Yeah, you mentioned when we were talking before that it was really an easy transition from just this. You might wonder if the online school thing is it then a difficult transition to the in-person environment in college, but you said not at all.
Yeah, and as a parent, it was obviously a concern of mine, because she's going from online to a very, very challenging environment, and they're challenged in multiple arenas at the Naval Academy, not just academically, and she transitioned just fine. And that brought me some peace.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about it, but just curious if there's anything, else to say about, this kind of one obvious reason that people choose online learning is to pursue passions, but not just, passions, but even hobbies, right? So whether it's like, you want to play a sport in college, but a hobby, who would want to say a little bit more about that topic?
Well,
Yeah.
one of the reasons, Elizabeth was a competitive gymnast, and she was training 3-4 hours a night, 5 or 6 days a week. And it was 2020, March of 2020, I think it was. And the schools didn't know where they were going. So they were in kind of a hybrid, and it was a mess. So we just, that combination made us switch, and it was the best thing we did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she decided, she wanted to learn a new skill in 10th grade, which is not easy to do, to switch
Right.
sports in today's world. Most of these kids are training from the time they're little to take it all the way through the end of high school. And she wound up deciding, she didn't want to do gymnastics anymore. So the first thing she said was, I want to learn a new skill. And she found, the kids that are online, they don't have the usual activities to go to. There's not the after school club that you're just going to show up to. You really have to make an effort and find things in your community. And she did. And she found so many more things than I ever expected. She wound up saying, I want to learn how to shoot a rifle, and found a club not far. And that turned out to be what got her really recognized by a coach come her senior year, even though she only had like 3 years in it. But she had enough, she had the confidence, and she had the time to put into it. Because she actually did two sports. She rode crew, and then she also did competitive rifle. So, as well as many other volunteer activities and community service, she was really able to find her way in our community without any assistance from a regular structure that you normally find in a private or public school. So it was pretty eye-opening for us, I think, knowing that there's plenty of choices out there for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Not to worry, that they can stay pretty busy if they want.
Right, and they can use their time efficiently. Like I said, when they sit down in front of the computer, it's all business. And if you look at the structure of a standard school and how much time are they moving around, or are they going from, are they socializing? So Elizabeth is all about using her time effectively. So that allowed her to do a lot of other cool things.
And
So
they get
that
to
reminds me
explore.
of sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say they get to explore all these things. That's what, I've been coaching homeschool families and students since the 80s. So I've had a lot of students that I've coached, and they get to explore. And so many of them decide, like I had one also that was gymnastics, and she had so much practice. But then she decided she didn't want to do that. And she's going into medicine. But she got to explore all different kinds of things and find out during high school what she really wanted to go into. And also I found that students that are homeschooled in whatever way, whether it's online or, not online, they do better in college. And colleges started actively recruiting them several years ago because they realized that these kids, when they got to college, they really wanted to go. And they had something that they were pursuing. And it wasn't just, oh, I guess I need to go to college, like that, because everybody says I have to go to college. I had one student who took flying lessons when she started when she was 14, and she got her license when she was like 16, and now she's at Embry-Riddle in Florida. It's an aeronautics school. I mean, they just do amazing, amazing things because they have time to do these kinds of things and really find out what they want to do.
Right. And also,
yeah, go ahead.
If they're seeking out things that they're interested in because they're forced to do that because it's not laid on their lap, then they're probably going to be excited about it and use their time meaningful, and they'll probably excel on those things.
So there's an interesting thing about like using your time, right? Like using your time, meaning, and like Randy posed a great question kind of behind the scenes that I would love to kind of switch gears a little bit about that, which is, are there any students for whom this might not be the best option? And like one thing is, do you have to be self-motivated, and are really good at time management to make this work? Or is there enough support that that's not the case? So that's kind of two questions in one. I don't know, Randy, you posed the question. Do you have anything?
I was going to say, since I asked it, do you want me to?
Yeah.
Because I can piggyback on the last question too, because my kids aren't exploring, right? The students that I'm encountering that are doing online school, they found their thing.
Right.
And that's why they're doing online school, because the horse show starts at 8 a.m. and it doesn't end until it's over. And so you don't necessarily know what your schedule is that day. So being able to have that flexibility to learn when you can is wonderful. So when I'm talking with parents who might be debating, do we go with online school because now we're traveling more and we have these competitions and this is what our calendar looks like and we're going to be in different states and all of that. I do think self-motivation is key. Specifically for my students, I say, this student has to be an engaged learner, whatever that means for that student, because if you have them in this environment where they're pursuing the thing that drives them, that gets them up in the morning, and it's all around them, they still have to go to school. And so you don't want that conflict between parent and student, with parent going, have you logged on? Have you gone to school today? The student has to be engaged enough to the level of saying, I am going to prioritize my education when I need to and strike that balance.
Makes a ton of sense. I would love to hear from others about this topic.
I mean, obviously, if you're motivated and you're organized, it's going to help. Self-motivated. I think also that whatever structure you set up, some kids don't want to get out of bed, and if their computer's right next to the bed, they're not going to want to get out of bed. So maybe you want to have a separate location where they go to school, a separate room, or however you need to set it up. But I think one thing going back to colleges is when they see a young person apply for college and they're homeschooled or online school, there are some qualities that are kind of known of self-motivation, self-discipline, organization, because you do have to have those qualities to really excel, and they can be developed too. I don't know, Suzanne, your thoughts on that?
I think the flexibility of Laurel Springs, where a kid can log on any day of the week, any time of the day, is pretty incredible, because some people work better later in the day, or maybe even at night, or maybe they just want to do English class all week and work on history on the weekends. This is the flexibility of the program. And I think in our experience, Elizabeth was pretty happy that she was able to make her week the way she wanted it. And we were fortunate that we didn't really have to stay next to her. We really had no idea what she was doing most of the time, unless we got a little notification, oh, she's a little behind in this class, or midterms are coming up. We would get notifications. We would know when she was having big exams. But other than that, I mean, I guess if your kid is needing more attention, more hands-on, that's something the parents have to decide. But for us, it was pretty seamless. We raising 3 children recently, 2 in public school, 1 online. I would say it's much more work with the public school. I just found like the workload was almost ridiculous at some point. And then there's a lot of confusion when you don't have the curriculum is so straightforward with Laurel Springs. There's no question what you need to know on a test, what you need to know for that next day. It walks you right through. It's very straightforward. It's objective. There's no wondering, what am I supposed to do or what am I supposed to know? And there's always professors there or teachers that are right at your fingertips to answer any questions. These kids have direct access, with individual attention from their teachers, which is pretty incredible. So for us, it was a positive experience, and I would do it over again in a heartbeat.
I mean, one example is with my oldest daughter. I remember trying to game plan out what the math teacher was going to ask her on the test, and trying to strike plan what questions are you going to get. And that's stressful for her, and obviously for parents as well. Like Suzanne said, Laurel Springs is much more objective. Here's a material, you're going to practice it with some quizzes, and eventually you're going to be tested on that same material. So I had a lot fewer questions from Elizabeth, much less.
That is interesting to hear.
Yeah. And can I add something?
Yeah.
So of course it's pretty easy if a student is already self-motivated and an organized type person. What I found is that a lot of kids that, the parents would say, oh, they would never do that. They would never do this on their own. But it happens like magic, sort of, because if let's say they start online school, all the things that Chris and Suzanne were saying about control over their time, pursuing their interests, being able to figure out their week, suddenly it's like their job, and it's a valuable thing. And so a lot of kids that you wouldn't think could do it can. Sometimes they do need a parent to kind of help them, with how are we going to schedule this now? I've never done this before, and so you can work together a little bit to work it out. But I find that mostly kids feel so good about how the program is laid out that it's almost a natural thing to go right into it.
Plus, parents can log in and see exactly where their child is in the curriculum or in the timeline. So you can.
And it sounds like the teachers, like that's something that I hear sometimes is just, well, would you really be able to create strong connections, deep connections with teachers? But it sounds like Elizabeth was that, that they're right there for you. So, I mean, can you speak a little bit into that, how that is?
Well, I know she corresponded mainly through email with specific questions, or when she had a question on a subject matter or certain any question, and they were very prompt in getting back to her to answer the question. And for Elizabeth, that was her main concern. It was figuring out the question and then moving on and tracking and learning the material. That was her priority. So that process worked well for her. I don't know, Suzanne, you want to add some more to that?
I think also it was such a personal experience working with the teachers because you get direct feedback on assignments. They give personal comments. You know, they're not just it. For our older two girls, they were good students, and they would always get overlooked in the classroom because they didn't need extra attention. And I think having that online school experience where the teacher is just responding to you, you're getting a direct answer to the question. And if you need more information, they're going to spend the time to get you what you need. And I thought it was very positive. We never had a problem with anything really. Um, we we were very satisfied with the level of professionalism, and everyone was so kind and positive. And that's another thing that we really appreciate about Laurel Springs, or the teachers are just, they're so giving, and all the advisors, we really had positive experiences getting advice, and they really helped us navigate whatever we needed help with, because it is foreign. Most people don't. For us too, it was a transition to get used to just not being able to physically go somewhere and meet these people. But there's plenty of opportunities online to meet your teachers, to go to the open house, to go to meetings. It really does feel like a warm community, which is really important.
And the
Randy, I see
counselors
you
were,
nodding.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead, Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the counselors were outstanding. The application process for the Naval Academy is pretty extensive, and you have to be on time with everything, and it was just very easy.
That's great. Yeah, I was just saying, Randy, I see you nodding the whole time, kind of in the teacher conversation. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, no, I think that one-on-one with teachers, right? That's the ideal situation that any parent wants for their kid in any educational situation. And just the fact that I will talk with students who say, you know, I don't like this class, not because maybe of the material, but just the way that the teacher teaches, or you know, the way that the class is set up, or whatever it is. And when they have the ability to have that one-on-one communication with a teacher, I think it enhances communication, and it just helps everybody do better.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And Mariama, you too. It sounds like you have something to add to this.
Well, I mean, everybody kind of said it, but yes,
You agree?
I
Yeah.
totally agree. I mean, and I do that with my students, you know, whether you're in private homeschool, whatever you're doing, just having that person say, "Oh, I like this, and what did you think about when you did this?" And you can get them also thinking about their own. That's another thing that I love to do, is get them to kind of grade themselves and say, you know, how did you do here? Could you have done something else? And did you have more questions? And so now they're self-reflecting too. It isn't just somebody slaps a grade and you move on to the next thing, but it's a real communication between you and your teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, maybe just this technology has caught up where it really doesn't create so much distance anymore. I as a psychotherapist, I don't tend to work with young people online, but with, you know, adults I do too. And it, like, you can have very deep connections through the computer nowadays. I think we're all kind of used to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if they have and if they have outside activities, you know, they're getting coaching, they're creating bonds in person with their friends and their coaches, or whatever area they're involved with. So I think it's an efficient, good balance. That's my 2 cents.
Well, one other reason that people choose this type of education is for family time, which we've touched on a little bit, and family values, you know. And I think you, Chris or Suzanne, one of you kind of mentioned that in one of our back and forths. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that worked in your family time and family values, having this kind of education?
Well, that was one of the surprises that we didn't choose online learning for that particular reason, but that is the best benefit of being online schooling, because you can do it anywhere, and you're not constrained by schedules. Like I said, the school day has no bearing on when you go to school. You can do it whenever you need to. We were able to travel outside of the normal school vacation times. So if we wanted to go away in March and spend a couple of weeks here or there, these are things that I didn't realize people actually do this. They take their kids for months at a time and go to Florida for the winter or whatever. um, I think also the fact that if you do have certain family values, we were finding it was getting harder and harder in public school to really shield our children from what was happening. And it was such a blessing to just remove our daughter and not have to deal with it. You know, if something came up, we could discuss it together at home and not have so many voices influencing her. And I think that made her really solidify what she believed. I mean, she's away at college and making her own decisions, making her own life, and is not confused by what she believes. She really knows herself at this point. You get to know when you're going to school online by yourself, you really get to figure yourself out. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn everything that your weaknesses, for one, because if you're not waking up every day and making a schedule for yourself, or not taking your notes, or not studying it, it's gonna only be your fault in the end. So these are the things that you have to learn while you're in this independent study, and it is very independent. So I'm so proud of just those 3 years, having those amazing experiences that I don't think she would have got at a regular school. I don't think she would have appreciated all the work that she put into it. And it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's what you want. I mean, for her, she wanted more challenging academics. I don't think every kid has to do that. I think there's plenty. The course catalog is amazing at Laurel Springs. And you can do classes year round if you want. Elizabeth liked to go to school in the summer and knock out a couple of classes. She was able to take SAT prep over the summer, and it counted as a credit. So she didn't really complain too much about that. And it was very useful. It really did help her prep. And she got to take a lot of fun classes too. And even PE, I think she enjoyed to a certain degree. I always wondered, how did they do PE online? But yeah.
Well, how did they?
They have to sometimes keep a log of their physical activity. They had assignments, they had to watch videos, and there was a lot of it was a combination of learning about physical exercise as well as doing it. So for the athletes out there, they definitely have to put in a little extra with the PE classes. But I thought it was I'm gonna miss that time with her, because we got 3 years with her. We always knew she was in her room for the most part, and we're gonna miss that. But I think it's such an amazing experience. I know a lot of parents with smaller children worry about how they're gonna balance having kids at home all the time, but it makes your family share these experiences together, and it's amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Randy or Mariama?
Well, I've
Mariama, yeah.
certainly found that with that's what families say. Like at first they're kind of nervous and scared and what do you mean learn at home kind of thing. um but I hear that a lot, almost from every single family that does it, that they're and again, bringing in the socialization thing, there are the church groups or the youth groups that they belong to. So that's all strengthened, going back to family values. There's just time. There's time. It's not like this frantic thing of getting up at 6 a.m. to get to school. Some high schools start at 7:15 in the morning. You're rushing and remember your homework and it's all frantic, Um,
That's a
and
good word
then,
for it. Frantic.
yeah, it really is. And you're running from one class to another. And then if you do have after school stuff, there's that. And then you're rushing home and maybe you have other things. Maybe you have youth group or guitar lessons or whatever. And then you're trying to get all of that. By the time you eat dinner, it's 8 o'clock. It's not healthy,
Yeah.
physically or mentally. Our system is not that great. So anyway, this way you're learning like it's the work-life balance that that
Yeah.
we try to tell adults about, right? And they go to therapy to learn how to do that. And so this, in a way, is you're already learning how to do that as you're growing up in
Such
your
a great
family.
point.
Yeah,
Such
it's
a great
really,
point.
really great. And families do become closer. It's just not just a one-time thing with Chris and Suzanne. They become closer. Sometimes there's that thing like, what? My kids are going to be here all day. They're not going to like that. But it's not like that, again, because they're freed up. It's a whole different mindset. And I call it magic. I say magical things happen.
Well, I mean, that's a great, great note to maybe think about ending this section, part of it before we take other questions. But is there anything that, you all that we didn't touch on, just any other piece of like a burning thing you have to say before we shift gears?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, well, that was a great discussion. I think we are, let me just make sure. Oh, so I get to have a little closing statement before the question and answer. So, so one of the things, that I would say is that, I mean, again, I'm a psychotherapist that works with this age, and there is just so much anxiety and depression, and frankly, actually suicide of even, middle school right now. And it's just,
Yeah.
whatever we are doing in schools, it is really, it's really hard on young people. And I think a lot of it is achievement pressure, just this pressure to achieve. That's a conversation of its own. There's some great books written about that right now. And then there's this, we haven't said a lot about that in this discussion today, but it sort of feels to me like the luck of the draw, especially for girls for some reason, but both, kind of the luck of the draw of who you get peer-wise in your class, in your grade. And it can either be great or it can just be terrible. And so, and then what are you going to do? Like, there's kind of nowhere to go if you happen to have, a situation where you just can't find your people in your class, or you have bullying or things like that. So the fact that there's just a really high quality option that has so many of these benefits, it's like, it's not just a kind of consolation. It's like you all have listed so many reasons today why you would just make this choice, that it's just fantastic to me to have these young people have a place where they can feel like they can succeed and socialize and have, positive experiences for their mental health and their family life. And so that's what my wrap up would be, is just like, for the kids who don't find their social place, there's a great option out there. So I don't know how to do it, but I think it's time for audience questions. Oh, yay.
Yes, thank you. We'll get the rest of the crew added in.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, everyone. That was a fantastic discussion, and we have had a number of questions come in from different audience members, so we'll slowly work our way through these. I'm going to kick things off with Heidi McClure, who is the Dean of Counseling for Laurel Springs School. This question says, knowing that the numbers change year to year, roughly how many equestrian students graduate from Laurel Springs on a yearly basis?
Yeah, so that is absolutely a great question. I think, obviously, for people who may know us, we do have a large percentage of student athletes. Just over 40% of our students identify as student athletes. And of those, we have a good number of equestrian students. Based on a survey of some of our 2025 graduates, we had about just about 60 equestrians. That's out of a class of about 600. So about 10% of our graduating class, identify as equestrians. And so, we definitely have a great community for that. And we've got, Pam Dalton will talk in a minute about some of our social opportunities. And we do have, some clubs and groups specifically for our equestrians, which I think is amazing. And we have, students who matriculate to all different kinds of places. We've got a lot of students kind of scattered between places like Auburn and Baylor. We've got students at Brown. We've got students who are at TCU. We've got students at, University of South Carolina. So we've got students kind of across the states doing equestrian things and continuing to ride, should that be what they are interested in pursuing after they leave Laurel Springs.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heidi. And kind of sticking with the equine questions for a second, Randy, this might be a little bit more in your wheelhouse. So the question was, how many equestrians typically go on to IHSA, the Intercollegiate Horse Show Association colleges, versus NCEA, National Collegiate Equestrian Association schools?
Well, the NCEA is much smaller. So the number of riders who go there is much smaller. I liken it to the Ivy League. So it's an elite group. In 2024, they signed 65 riders. In 2025, they have signed a class of 64 riders so far for Division I. And then there's probably, there's a total of, I think, 23 schools, Division I through Division III. So, that's a small percentage. And then in the IHSA, there's almost 400 schools that participate. So numbers wise, the bulk are going to wind up riding in some form of IHSA program. And then, the elite are going to trickle their way up to the NCEA. I will say from my position, I tell students, if you want to, if you're doing online school and you are riding passionately and this is your sport, you will find a place for you. Don't put a label on it. IHSA, NCEA, just go to a great college and find your people who also ride, and you'll have a great experience.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And we see that with many of our students at Laurel Springs. And as you kind of heard today, even from Suzanne and Chris, we have students who have a lot of different passions, not just equine. And the next set of questions is really kind of around opportunities that Laurel Springs offers. So I'm going to pass this one over to Pam Dalton, who's our Director of Education. And these families are wondering if Laurel Springs offers any opportunities for families such as meetups, field trips, et cetera. And for a new family to Laurel Springs, who with an 8th grader, what are your recommendations for a new student getting started with some of these social opportunities?
Awesome. Thank you, Marissa. So absolutely, we do have in-person opportunities in the form of meetups and field trips. We currently have one field trip each month in a different city across the United States. These field trips are structured in such a way that families choose which field trip or field trips that they attend. We actually have one family who drives all over, like they come to all the field trips each month. You see them in a different city. They absolutely love it. They have 3 students with us, and they are just so highly engaged that the field trips are like the highlight of of their months, from what they tell us. But anyway, the trips are normally a couple of days in length, and students have that opportunity to meet friends from all over the country who either sometimes share similar interests, sometimes, maybe live in that general location. And then we have seen in some instances in some areas of the country where there are some parents who have started organizing some local gatherings in that region for the families who live close enough and want their students to have that connection with their classmates. Another note there, we also have an international travel learning experience. We had one last year to Costa Rica. We have one in just a couple of weeks where a group of staff and students will travel to Italy and stay for about a week. So we have those opportunities as well. At the end of each school year, we have a year-end celebration where families and students gather to celebrate not only those students who are graduating that year, but students in other grade levels. We have many events there, like a prom and grade level activities and fun outings and that kind of thing. So that's always a highlight of our year. We love year-end celebration. Back to the question about the best way for a new student to get involved. We do have online social opportunities as well, not just those in-person events that I mentioned. We have approximately 70 clubs this year. Those clubs meet for structured activities typically once a week, sometimes every other week, under the direction of a faculty member who sponsors the club based on content area interest or outside interest. We have Lego clubs for the younger students. We have just everything across the board. STEM clubs for older students who are interested in a STEM area. If your student has a particular interest, they can reach out to our Dean of Community Engagement, Ms. Patty McClymans, and she could let them know which clubs or activities we have that might center or focus around those activities. They can reach out to their teachers. Teachers can send them a list of clubs and activities that are available and when they meet and that kind of thing. We also have just a general hangout session on Fridays at noon Eastern Time, where students can just pop in to get to know teachers, counselors, other students, just a wide variety of people who attend those Fridays. We call those hangouts. So that is a great way to get started and just meeting other people.
Thank you so much, Pam. Yeah, I think a lot of families and people exploring online programs don't realize that there is a really robust social environment that exists both online and in person that students can get involved in. This question in particular is for Suzanne and Chris, but then they were curious if your daughter joined any of the clubs to help meet some other online students. And then after you answer, I would just be curious what some of the other panelists think as far as the importance of online students getting involved in social activities to help engage with other age peers in their age level.
So Elizabeth, I think her first year, she did join quite a few clubs. She did sign language club and a computer coding club. And, but I think as she got more involved with her sports, that became less of her priority. But I've met so many kids from Laurel Springs that are so active in their activities and the student government. They do incredible things, meeting each other. I was surprised at the end of the year celebration how many kids really knew each other and was so excited to meet new friends. And they, even though Elizabeth hadn't really had strong relationships online, when she got to that celebration, it was like she knew everyone. It was a very unique experience for us to watch her connect in that way, and even for us to connect. It was really amazing.
Yeah, I agree. The graduation was special, and a lot of these young people, a lot of hugs, and it's like they kind of hung out every day. I think they all understood each other, so it was very supportive at the graduation. You can tell that they had a relationship. The students understood each other.
Yeah, absolutely. My first experience with YEC, I said the same thing. I said, I didn't know what to expect from a prom with from an online school, but these kids jumped right in. They embraced it. They had a blast. Randy, Mariama, Kristen, I just don't know if you have anything to add about the importance of students getting involved in social activities and engaging with their peers.
I mean, I totally think that's a great idea. Again, everybody's different. So for some people, meeting online is not, something that feeds them. But they get to try it out, though. They get to try because you have so many of those clubs. And maybe even if online is not your thing, because of the particular club, it might work for you. So again, you get to explore all these possibilities and just learn more about yourself. Like Suzanne was saying, you learn a lot about who you are and what works for you. And so then if not, there are these in-person things. But if a couple of kids connect, then they can always have their own Zoom meetings or online meetings or, text or whatever, and they can become friends that way. And then again, a lot of these kids already have really good relationships with either family members or their church, their youth group, other things that they're doing. So they can get very involved in their communities, even apart from whatever the school has, the online school has for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think through the college lens, I think a lot of parents are like, oh my goodness, they're going to need an activities list when they apply to college.
Mhm.
They're going to need to show that they've done something. And so the advice that my colleagues and myself always give are, don't be afraid to try things. So try an online club through the school. And if you don't like that format, then go try something else that's in person. Exploring is fine. Exploring in a way meant to impress, in this case, a college, does not come across the way that families want it to. So be genuine about it. If you join the guitar club for a semester and then you decide you don't like playing guitar, that's fine. The colleges that are reading students' resumes and applications know there are only 24 hours in a day. There are only 7 days in a week. So where you're spending your time and how you're spending your time, show your true interests. If your true interest is, I just love to play guitar and read books, believe me, there's a college out there that is looking for your kid. So exploring and then being genuine about it. I think however you do it, just try things.
Yep.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
makes me wonder if it isn't like, if it's for a kid who might be shy, if it isn't like maybe a little bit safe to like try online, as opposed to just like having to walk into a group of kids or whatever. Like it may be a little bit level of safety to like try a little bit socially. Could be positive.
Yeah, that's a great kind of start to the next question. We have two more questions that I want to make sure we hit, and then we can kind of wrap things up for the evening. But this particular parent was asking, and feel free, anyone who wants to jump into this question. They're asking for any tips for helping a child with ADHD school from home.
That a Mariama
Okay,
thing?
so having my special ed credential, which actually doesn't mean that much, because for me, so many kids that are labeled ADHD, it doesn't exist when you switch to online school. Everything totally changes because it's only in the context of being in that place, sitting in that desk, needing to be there and not move and take everything in a certain way and do what everybody else is doing. And it just doesn't work. And it becomes that label of ADHD. So I can tell you that any label, whether it's dyslexia, learning disability, whatever, things totally change when you switch into this other format. And again, all the things we already talked about, where you have more control, you can figure out your day, you don't have that pressure, you don't have to be at school at 7. All of those things completely change. So I hope that helps, because I could actually talk about this for 5 hours, but we don't have that time. But so for example, if that child needs to move, they can move at home, right? And they could switch from one room to the next, or stand up at that tall table, or get one of those, those, what do they call those, exercise balls, that move. And just that can make the biggest difference in being able to focus. So lots of things can change when they're working at home.
That's great. Anybody else have anything to add on that topic? Perfect. Well, Kristen, you've been fantastic as a moderator tonight. We really appreciate you leading this conversation. We want to end with the last question specific towards you. Knowing your background as a resiliency expert, if you could leave the audience tonight with one key takeaway about resilience and the power of a non-traditional education, what would that be, and how could they start applying it to their lives today?
Well, resilience is really about knowing what you need to have a high quality of life, and knowing what you use, what tools and skills you use if you need to bounce back from a challenge. So we've talked about so many of these things, like if you know yourself and you know what your personal strengths are and your personal passions are, so you can live your life in alignment with your own strengths and passions, you're going to not only have a high quality of life, but you're going to also know, like, when life gets challenging, okay, so what strengths can I rely on? What do I know about myself that I can use to get through this time? So many of these things we've talked about, which is just, again, pursuing your passions, but also like the time that you get, like the time to structure your day in a way that feels supportive, that you build self-care into your day so it isn't frantic. Whoever used that word, it's like the perfect word. And so you have an opportunity with this type of school to structure your day in a way that feels balanced and healthy, and that you're like filling up your cup. So the takeaway, I guess, would be to maybe one thing, like help your kid name one personal strength and one passion that adds quality to their life and that they can use when they're feeling down. If you're feeling down, you can go use a strength, play the guitar or anything that makes you feel better, and you're automatically gonna, shift your mood.
I love that. I would say that's great advice for all of us. Parents, all of us should be doing that on a regular basis. Well, we appreciate all of you joining us tonight and making Transformation Thursdays the exciting conversation that it is for educators and parents and students who are interested in exploring alternative education pathways and seeing what that might be like. So thank you all. And for those of you who've joined us tonight, we will be hosting another Transformation Thursdays next month. So be on the lookout for those emails, and hopefully you'll join us again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.